CELPIP speaking is one of the hardest modules. It's going to test you to your fullest, but there are 10 strategies that our students use and they score 10, 11, or 12 time after time. What are these strategies? Well, let's start with strategy number 1, and that is to organize your thoughts effectively. This is where you need to understand how many points you're supposed to say for all 8 tasks. The answer is 2 to 4 points. Now, when we're talking about the 90-second questions, you need 3 points here only, not much. You need to understand that you need to have good quality points instead of quantity points. Now, when you come to the 60-second questions, general rule is 2, 3, or 4 points. For something like a picture question, you would go more, 4 points. However, for other questions, 2 to 3 points are more than enough. The golden rule number 2 is to avoid repetitions. Repetitions will kill you. Now, for common words like and or but, it's okay. However, if you're using a word like and, every time you're using it as a connector, you're losing marks. Instead, use a variety. For example, furthermore, moreover, likewise. Instead of saying happy, you can say delighted, elated, excited. Different usage of words is required to give you the marks for your range and accuracy. Once again, coming back to the transition words, this is our tip number 3. Most students avoid this completely. However, you're going to lose marks on structure, most likely task response if the examiner does not know when you move from point number A to point number B. And also, you're going to lose marks on your vocabulary range as well. Here, you want to use words like firstly, secondly, thirdly, moreover, furthermore, accordingly, similarly, when you are connecting different ideas. When you are objecting or using contrast, you can say in contrast, in stark contrast, on the other hand, nonetheless or nevertheless. And when you get into conclusions, you want to say therefore, hence, thereby, consequently. Using words like these effectively arranges your thoughts very well and gives you marks for your connectors. The 4th tip is to avoid long pauses. So this happens when you're thinking about the next thing you're trying to say. Let me give you a key tip here. Use some phrases. For example, at the time when you are thinking about something, you could say, while this is a difficult topic for me to think on, I would suggest that, or I would say that. Now, by saying all of this, you are taking at least 4 to 5 seconds, which instead would have been an awkward pause. You're filling that up, but not only are you filling this up, you're doing it beautifully by using a complex sentence such as, while this is hard for me to talk about, and then you insert your clause number 2, which is going to be the point. And the point at this time, you should know, because you have spent 4 to 5 seconds talking about this phrase. Another version of this would be something like, one other important factor to consider here is, say it exactly how I said it. In fact, you can pause the video, repeat the last 10 seconds, and try to copy me. What I'm trying to do here is say it slowly and pause while I'm using this phrase. This helps me think and also fill in the time instead of just pausing awkwardly. The next tip, the 5th tip, is to practice paraphrasing the question. Now, for example, in question number 2, if you're asked, what is your favorite food? And your answer starts with something like, my favorite food is. You are not paraphrasing the question. In fact, you might be copying a lot of words from task 2 because the question usually is loaded. The same thing happens a lot in task 5 when you're given the points of comparison for your picture and the opposing picture. If you're literally copy-pasting all the points and just talking with regards to reading the picture, you are going to lose marks. Instead, practice paraphrasing and using synonyms. A great resource for this is thesaurus.com, which teaches you synonyms on everything. Use that for your practice at home. Tip number 6 is to avoid using something which is very general. For example, if you say that, I like my watch, that's general. Why do you like it? Explain that. Or at the least, explain with some description. I really like this watch, or I have been in love with this watch for a very long time. Have a little description, make it more specific. Use words like really to emphasize what you're talking about, extremely, interestingly, and so on. At the same time, you're not just describing these things, but you're using adverbs like lees, extremely, seriously, surprisingly, which again give you the range. At the same time, they help your descriptions. Tip number 7 is to use a mixture of long and short sentences. Very important to understand. most of the students are using simple, short sentences, or some of you are focused too much on using just long sentences because you've heard that complex sentences give you marks, which is correct. However, if you're just using one of the two, you're losing marks because you are supposed to use a combination of the two. So going back to our example where we were talking about our watch, we now fix our sentence by saying, I really like my watch. But now you want to elaborate it because you have made a small sentence. Next sentence should be long and complex. So, I really like my watch. This has been my favorite since it was given to me by my grandfather and it holds a sentimental value for me. So here you have a complex sentence coming after a short sentence, and examiners will love you for your emphasis, for your range, for a combination of long and short sentences. Tip number 8 is to stay calm and not rush. Most of you think the more you rush, the more words can be spoken. However, this is a dangerous train of thought. If you're speaking too much, you're speaking in a rushed manner. You might not be able to finish on time, you might run out of breath, and if you're running out of breath, you may be nervous. There are just so many problems with this. However, directly where it hurts you in the marking scheme is in terms of tone. You need to have a calm tone and talk at a steady pace. You cannot rush it, and you cannot also speak very slowly. So let me present a sentence to you as an example of how the pace should be. In my opinion, family gatherings are very important because they bring everyone together. So this is a steady paced sentence. Here you have a little pause after in my opinion, because that's one clause. So then you take a breath and then you continue. Now when you say words like important or everyone, you slightly raise your volume, and that's where you also get a little breather in. And all of this becomes a sentence or sentences with steady pace, giving you that mark for good expressions. The second last tip you need to understand is to avoid using filler words altogether. This is a death sentence, and for me it's extremely frustrating to see students who speak really well, perfect grammar, perfect vocabulary, but while you're talking, you're going to say things like or like, or you know. This is too casual. You can talk like that in front of your friends, but the moment you do this in CELPIP speaking, you start losing marks. This is important to avoid at all costs. Instead of using fillers, make sure to use connectors or simply replace them with pauses. The final tip is to always leave room for your conclusion. Super important. Not having conclusions is considered a major mistake. So when you're finishing, always reserve the last 5 to 10 seconds or sometimes even more for one or two sentences that you will use for a conclusion. Something simple like overall or consequently or therefore. Keep these words in mind. So as soon as you're about to finish, you have that time reserved to include one sentence and wrap up your entire idea. Guys, that's it for this video. Please like, share, and subscribe for more CELPIP content.